welcome back to Room 237, and I have another Italian Giallo review. So my last review was Umberto Lenzi's Eyeball, and for this I'm going to start diving into the Umberto Lenzi Carol Baker Complete Giallo Blu-ray box set released by Severin, which has all 4 films that he made with actress Carol Baker, and I believe they were his first 4 Gialli films ever. I'm pretty sure of that. And they consist of Orgasmo, So Sweet, So Perverse, A Quiet Place to Kill, and Knife of Ice. And so I'm just going to go in order. So this will be for Orgasmo, which I will say, whenever I hear the title, I can't help but think of the Trey Parker film. That's just ingrained in my mind now. Also, it was released in Italy as Orgasmo, and it was released in it was released internationally, or in America, as Paranoia. So I think a lot of people know this is Paranoia, but at least there's some confusion because A Quiet Place to Kill was released as Paranoia in Italy, but A Quiet Place to Kill in America. Also, the American version, Paranoia, I think received an X rating, and it had a few more shots of nudity, including of Carol Baker, and also had a different ending. I believe this is the director's cut, so it has the original ending, so I'm just going to call it Orgasmo, as I'm sure it was intended. Now, this was Umberto Lenzi's first Giallo, and I have to say this is probably my favorite one so far. I mean, I enjoyed 7 Bloodstained Orchids, really enjoyed Spasmo, and I really had a fun time with Eyeball. And this one is the most different so far that I've seen, because this one is more, it's not a murder mystery. Again, I haven't mentioned it yet. It came out in 1969, so this is the Pre-Argento era. It wasn't quite, Giallo wasn't necessarily full-on, like murder mystery that it would go on to be known as. They were actually quite different in the 60s. And I actually think it was more just about amoral rich people, sort of things happening to them in various ways, but with a twist. And this one is more about blackmail. If I had to compare this to another Giallo I've seen, it would probably be Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, because the whole reason at the turning point for this film, for why things are going as far as they are, is because of pictures of Carol Baker in some sexual situations that I'm assuming because of the time, could be very bad for her and could kind of ruin her status or whatever. So it's not really a murder mystery, it is more blackmail, but it's also just a psychedelic frenzy of just sex and drugs. It's very interesting, and it also kind of plays out, as you can kind of tell from the title, or from the cover. It's somewhat like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I mean, that wasn't a sex film, but holding someone captive, and all signs of hope for when people are around are pretty much squashed. And it does a very good job at building the tension and really diminishing the hope. And it's very stylish. Probably the most stylish one of his that I've seen so far. I mean, Eyeball wasn't super stylish. Not much I remember from Spasmo or 7 Bloodstained Orchids on top of my head worth noting. But You know, there's a lot of cool stuff with colored lighting and camera angles and music, which actually, Orgasmo and So Sweet, So Perverse comes with the score. So that's really nice. And the score for this film was done by, does it say on here? Oh, Piero Umiliani, who I'm pretty sure I've seen other films that he's scored. He passed away in 2001. he scored a film called Omicron. Nice. Let's see. Orgasmo. Death Knocks Twice, which is a Giallo I have not seen yet. $5 for an August Moon. Baba Yaga, which I have, but I haven't got to yet. That's not a Giallo, but when I get to that, I have a story about that. Okay, so I guess those. But anyway, going through everything else. Directed by Umberto Lenzi, written by Lenzi, Ugo Moretti, and Marie-Claire Solenville. And stars Carol Baker, Lou Castel, Colette Descombs, probably mispronounced that, and Tino Carraro. Now, Lou Castel looked familiar. Kind of looks like a little rascal, but I know he was in Who Killed the Prosecutor and Why. I know that's another Giallo, but I haven't seen that yet. He was in Killer Nun, which I have reviewed. The 1983 film Trauma. I've heard of Irma Vep. That's not a horror film, but I know it just got a Criterion release. Oh, he was in The Nun. Wow. Is that the same Nun I'm thinking of? No, not The Conjuring Nun. But anyway. So, and the two original songs that are on here, Fate Had Planned It and Just Tell Me. I think Fate Had Planned It is the opening and closing song, and Just Tell Me is one that's played throughout and then at the very end in the car. But the score I really enjoyed. The score, one of the best scores I've heard in a while. Perfect mix of the kind of score you would hear in almost any Giallo, but obviously sounds different. One of the ones that has like vocal harmonies in it. Even one of them, oh, I can't remember how it goes, but it has a great score. And the two original songs are earworms. But Carol Baker plays this woman named Catherine West, whose husband is some sort of tycoon. I think he's an oil tycoon. I think it was like 7 weeks ago, she said he died in a car accident. And she's American, but she's fled to Italy to kind of get away. She has some problems with her nerves, and, you know, some of his family, like his aunts and some of the people he works with, are kind of upset with her inheriting everything, you know, like $2 million and the companies. So her attorney, Brian, sets her up in this villa that they own in Italy so she can kind of get away. And she spends her time painting, but also drinking and taking pills. And the only people she has near her is a maid, whose name I think was Teresa, and I'm guessing a groundskeeper. What was his name? Martino. I don't know if he's a groundskeeper or just someone that's Martino. And then one day, out of nowhere, this guy, Peter, played by Lou Castel, his car breaks down in front of her house. He lets her, or she lets him fix up his car. She starts to be a little hospitable, and then they kind of form a relationship. Now, in the beginning, she's kind of rude to everyone, and for the first few portions of the film, like her attorney is just handing her papers to sign, which seems like, oh, it's more paperwork for widows, like stuff about handling inheritance, power of attorney, and everything, just insurance or whatever, and she's just signing it. She kind of comes off as just like a spoiled brat, like someone that kind of married into money, but now she's starving for affection. And this Peter guy is more than willing to give it to her. You know, he just hops right in the shower with her, uninvited, but they start having sex. And then for a while, she starts living for it. Like, she goes outside one night, doesn't know he's there, but he's out in the bushes. He just tears her shirt off. They start having sex. She has to hide it from the maid at first. And that goes on for a little bit. And it gets to the point where she, like, races home so she can hop in bed with him. You know, gives her the affection that she's been starving for. Because she says that the only thing her husband knew how to give her was money. And then, at one point, he brings in his stepsister named Eva, who's played by Colette Descombes. Again, if I probably mispronounced that. And the two of them, they're like super free-spirited. They pretty much just keep pumping her full of booze and pills and sex, and really just trying to liberate everything about her. And she starts enjoying it, even having some sexual relations with Eva. And it's very stylish. I mean, there's shots through like those whiskey glasses, like the fancy ones that you pour the whiskey into, that has sort of like the I don't know what you call them, like office jars, I guess. Camera shots through those, or some things I don't even know what they were. But like, she takes this one drug, and there's really cool red lighting, and there's like kaleidoscope effects and sort of just strange, weird angles that look very cool and interesting. But then she kind of starts to get tired of it. She starts to feel kind of grossed out and ashamed. And she goes to kick them out. But then they show up again. Well, first they start slowly phasing everyone out. Like, they get Teresa to leave. They get Martino to leave. But that's a little bit later. But and as the film goes on, I mean, she gets super pale, bags under her eyes. Her lips are like turning blue. Which probably both due to the drugs and alcohol, but also due to her mental state pretty much breaking down. Some people have, I think this is looking a little too deep into it, but some people have said that during the shower scene where there's all the steam, it's like the ghost of her husband kind of looking over everything, and then the very ending that sort of comes back. I think that's looking a little deep into it. Also, there's a mysterious character. Like, when they're having sex out in the bushes, we just see the feet of someone walking around. And it's someone wearing one platform shoe. That's how they distinguish this character, from the rest of them. Regular shoe, and then one with like a thick platform. And he's also in the very beginning at the airport with binoculars, but we don't know what this person's about. You can tell it's probably up to no good, but shows up very seldomly. So little that I actually forgot about him, and then when he shows up again, it's just like, oh yeah, what was that guy about? Eventually, she kind of comes out of all that and starts feeling shame. or guilt or regret or whatever, and she doesn't want to be drugged up by them anymore, and she goes to kick them out. But then they show up again, and they present her with these photographs of her and Eva in bed together. And so then when she asks, how much do you want? They say, we just want you, which means, we want to keep doing this with you. So now they're a part of her life. And that's where the whole whatever happened to Baby Jane portion comes in, where she's essentially a prisoner. They just keep her full of pills and whiskey. She's already hooked on whiskey. She's already become an alcoholic. That when they want her to behave a certain way, or like if they need her to make a phone call, or if someone calls, they want her to act normal, they'll sort of hold up a bottle and be like, you can't have it until whatever. So that's when they get, Martino to leave, and, no one can help her. And that's as far as I'll go before I get into spoilers, but at first, like the first half is just kind of like, okay, it's like this woman kind of sexually liberating herself, this rich woman, but where's it all gonna go? And then when they finally present her with those pictures, and then they move in and really take over and kind of turn her mansion or villa into a prison for her, that's where it really gets interesting. And the twist at the end, I did not see coming. I do know how the American version ends, and I will say it does dilute some of what does happen, like what they did leave in. Doesn't really make sense why they did it that way. But it kind of reminded me of, like, Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward and Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Had the Key, where it's just like a twist a minute for like the last few minutes. It just keeps going. In fact, some of the twists are similar to those films, but I really liked it. It's very stylish. Towards the end, there's even a shot of her, like the last time she reaches for a bottle of whiskey, and like it's like the camera is right in front of the bottle, like that, and she's back here. It's like she's reaching for it, but it almost seems dreamlike, like it's warped. It's very cool looking. And yeah, Castell and Descombes, they have this presence to them that they really do come across as characters like from Last House on the Left or Night Train Murders, where you really grow to hate them. You really want to see them get theirs. Actually, I was also thinking of the movie Knock Knock, Eli Roth, which this is a much better movie than that. I'll spoil that movie. They don't get theirs, which is the most frustrating part. Here, there's a little bit of closure. I don't have it yet, but apparently Lindsay's later Giallo, An Ideal Place to Kill, is somewhat of a remake of this, but where the roles are flipped. I do have that coming, so I'm eager to check that out now. But I really liked this, and if this is a sign of things to come for how good these ones are, then I'm very excited, because this is the fourth Lenzi Giallo, and I've already said before, he's quickly become one of my favorite Italian directors, and it's movies like this whole movie surprised me. It did feel kind of slow, like I said, the first half, but then was the second, it really did have this sense of dread and, hopelessness and isolation, with some nice, style throughout. Good, really good villains. Carol Baker, I thought, did a great job. And she was already an established actress. She had already had Oscar and Golden Globe nominations for Baby Doll and I think Something Wild. I think she won the Golden Globe for Baby Doll. But and I think this was her second venture into Giallo after The Sweet Body of Deborah, which I have coming as well. But yeah, I really liked Orgasmo. And the twist I didn't see coming, like my jaw actually dropped at the first twist. But I'm going to get into that now, so spoilers. So as the film goes on, every time her attorney Brian would show up, you know, like the scene where she's tied up in bed with tape on her mouth, Peter and Eva would feed him stories like, yeah, all she does is drink and take pills, and you know, she talks about suicide and she just doesn't want to live anymore. We're all kind of worried, kind of putting the idea out there that she's not stable, really toying with her. Like at one point she tries to escape while they're in bed, but the keys aren't in her car, so she's going to try to take their car and just keep driving it into the garage door because they woke up and locked her in. But then Martino comes out and she's like freaking out to get her keys, but then Peter shows her that the keys are in the car. It's like, you're hallucinating. It does have kind of a Clockwork Orangey ending because they lock her in this one room where she sees this one mannequin where it will like flash to look like a skeleton. I thought that was kind of neat looking because she receives this telegram that her attorney Brian has died in a plane crash, and they left a big bottle of whiskey that was laced with 20 barbiturates to commit suicide. And you know, she's locked in there. They gave her that. They're just waiting for her to finally commit suicide. Kind of like the end of Clockwork Orange. But, and that's when she does, like, where she's reaching for it. It looks all dreamlike and warped. But she drops it. It breaks it or spills it. And I just lost my train of thought. I wanted to make sure I talked about other things too. Eventually, what happens is Brian does show up. And when she's finally at her wit's end, she's like standing out on her balcony. And she just jumps. She jumps, then Brian rushes up, turns her over. And the great twist I did not see coming was he looks at her and he looks distraught. It even hinted earlier that he might be in love with her. And he looks over at Peter and Eva and is just like, does he know? Is he going to say anything? Is he going to buy what they say? But there's another level that she has to go down. He walks up and just drops her, finishes it. He was in on it with them. So then they go to collect their inheritance because he gives Eva the forged suicide letters. He tells Peter to rush into town, cause a scene for an ambulance. So then we see them going to collect their inheritance. They have everything. But then, at that time, someone from Scotland Yard approaches Brian, takes him back to his office, and then he's presented with the guy with the platform shoe who was an investigator. Which another scene we saw him was earlier when there's a kitten up on the roof that Peter goes to get. He saves the kitten, and the guy's waiting down by the gate. So he shows up in a few scenes. And he was collecting all this information. And after she died, committed suicide, they found the suitcase that she hid in the beginning of the film. In the beginning of the film, she hides this suitcase up in the attic. And he says they found it. And, well, upon investigating her husband's accident, they found that there's, without a shadow of a doubt, evidence that his car had been tampered with. Like his brake lines were cut. And in the briefcase, they found proof that it was her, or that she had it happen. Therefore, his death was ruled as foul play, so she does not get his inheritance. Which also we see that in the beginning of the film, all the paperwork that Brian was having her sign was adoption papers for Peter and Eva. I was like, are they supposed to be teenagers? But no, I guess it's just taking them into her family, adopting them, and making Brian like power of attorney. But she trusted him so much as an attorney that he told her that they were something else, so she just read it, or just signed them without reading them. So they had already taken care of all that. All they had to do was drive her to suicide. All the while, the final shot is Peter and Eva driving down the road, and the song, Just Tell Me, is playing. And they're like, oh, here's the song that Catherine hated. Because they would play it loudly to torture her. Like when they locked her in the garage, they played it super loud and held it up to the door. And they were like, oh, it's the song she hated. And they go to kiss, when they look, a truck pulls out and they hit it and they crash and they die. Kind of like what happens to Edwidge Fenech and her love interest at the end of Your Vice is a Locked Room. Which I will say, like we see them go, ah, and then we see the truck, and then the next shot is just them kind of down with the cracked windshield. Not even a crash sound effect. But, it didn't really bother me. So they died without even knowing that they didn't have anything, which I will say is kind of a bummer. I guess the American version, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, it changed that she's responsible for her husband's death, so it's just like they get killed for no reason, or it makes it seem more arbitrary that it actually seems more arbitrary to have him die not knowing, but I'm pretty sure that's how Paranoia ends. And also similar to people thinking it's the ghost of her husband being the fog, kind of watching over, or the steam. Some people also say that it's like the ghost of Catherine is the one making the song play on the radio when they crash. Because one, she's responsible for her husband crashing, and she hated that song when they played it, so now it's playing when they crash because of her. I think that's looking too much into it. I think it's just more symbolic and coincidental. But yeah, I think this is a very stylish, effective film. I always like movies like this anyway, where people are kind of held captive. Like, there was one I watched recently that was like that. I can't remember what it was now. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Misery. There's a Hulu movie called Run that's like that. God, what was the one I watched recently that was like that? You'll drive me nuts now, but yeah, I like movies like that anyway. This was a very interesting Giallo. I like ones that are kind of different. Like this one is really blackmail. That's the thing that hinges, that kind of carries the story along. But then the twist does deal with inheritance and insurance, which many Gialli of the 60s did. All were great performances. I think Carol Baker did a great job. Lou Castel and Colette Descalmes, they were people that you really, they really felt like villains. They really, in their own way, like a Last House type villain. that you really wanted to see them get theirs. I did not see the twist with Brian, the attorney, just dropping her and finishing it off. It does have some psychedelic, cool, like, color filters or effects, like that kaleidoscope effect, and just whether it's drug fueled or paranoia, it does a good job at showing her state of mind at that time. And this very well could be, as of now, my favorite Umberto Lenzi Giallo. I really enjoyed this film. I had a lot of fun with it. So that is Orgasmo. Next, I'll be doing So Sweet, So Perverse. And I'm just going to go in order. So then it'll be A Quiet Place to Kill, and then Knife of Ice. So I'm really looking forward to this Lindsay Baker Giallo collection. So stay tuned for those, and thank you for watching.